Get the power to do more with Storable websites. More marketing, more engagement, more customers moving into your facility. Storable helps operators do more with the most powerful technology in self-storage. Learn more at storable.com/do-more.
Okay, welcome everyone. We're excited to be hosting our first webinar in this new series. I'm glad that you're able to join us today. For today's webinar, we'll be discussing how you can maximize the ROI of your marketing website through effective use of your tenant portal. Okay, thank you everyone for taking the time to join us today. My name is Miko Sonescu. I'm a product marketing manager here at Storable, and I will be your host for the How to Do More webinar series. Before we jump into today's content though, I'd like to start with an overview of this new webinar series. So 2 weeks ago, we hosted a webinar in which Matt Beal, a product marketing colleague of mine here, discussed that what we understand to be the 4 primary market forces impacting the self-storage industry today. As a reminder, those are a tenant shift to digital, incoming supply crunch, labor shortages, and growth through M&A. During his session, Matt introduced these concepts along with the data that we use to bring us to these conclusions, and he discussed the need for operators to begin to reevaluate how they're thinking about their business to have continued success. Historically, many operators have just focused on some of the simpler key metrics like occupancy to measure the success of their business. And as a North Star going forward, we recommend either focusing on a revenue per square foot, revenue per tenant, or a revenue per unit model to ensure that your operation is growing even when you're near full occupancy. So if you missed that webinar, you can find a recording of it at blog.storable.com, and I'd recommend you check it out if you haven't. Today we're kicking off a new webinar series in which we'll discuss practical ways that you can respond to the market forces that Matt's webinar series will discuss. So this series will be oriented around concrete things that you can do to increase revenue, reduce cost, and mitigate risk. In today's session specifically, we'll discuss how providing a tenant portal on your facility website does more than just to create a positive customer experience. It also simplifies the day-to-day operations at your facility and has a positive impact on your ROI. Joining me today to discuss the benefits of your tenant portal is Fraser Robinson, owner of Titan Self-Storage. Fraser, thank you so much for taking the time to discuss this with me today.
Hey, no problem. Thanks, Nico. Looking forward to jumping in and sharing this with everyone.
Great. Hey, before we get started, would you mind just telling the audience here a little bit about your professional history in the self-storage space?
Yeah. So I bought my first storage facility back in June of 2018, and then I went on to buy 4 more for a total of 5 and 9 months. I personally have focused primarily on the management side of things and doing the day-to-day tasks myself, and now managing several of those tasks done by other people as well. I focused on buying value-add facilities and improving them physically, as well as the revenue on them with additional technology and automation into running the storage facilities.
Awesome, thank you, Fraser. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into today's conversation then. I wanted to start things off by making sure that we're all on the same page regarding what I mean by tenant portal. So in Matt's webinar a couple weeks ago, he outlined that a tenant shift to digital forms of engagement is one of the forces currently affecting our market. In addition to being a primary way for you to facilitate this digital engagement for your customers, the tenant portal on your website can also reduce the operational burden of your management team. If your managers aren't having to work with your customers on existing accounts, they can focus on providing value back to your business in a variety of other ways, such as driving new business in the community or optimizing various tasks at the facility. In fact, we recently conducted a survey and found that operators who utilize a tenant portal on their website save an average of 11 hours of staff time per facility per month. So there are a few things that you want to make sure your tenant portal experience accommodates. Those are managing account info, like your customer's address, phone number, email, that sort of thing. There's no reason that your manager should be spending time on basic data entry, and your customers don't want to wait on the phone or come into the store to update this either. They should be able to view their unit info or other documents in case they want to double check unit information or review their signed documents such as leases. Logging in to do that online is much more convenient than having to drive into the facility to see that on file. It should allow your tenants to sign new documents. So maybe you updated your lease or you need them to fill out an auto pay agreement. And whatever it is, it's important that you have a way for your tenants to provide their signatures without having to come into the facility to do so. And then speaking of auto pay, this is another huge value add for both operators and their customers. Some benefits, like convenience, are obvious, but there's some not so obvious benefits as well. For example, automatic payments are typically significantly more secure than processing payments otherwise. So by eliminating the middleman between you and your customer, you can significantly reduce your risk. We want you to get away from writing down credit card numbers on pieces of paper and accidentally losing those. And then finally, you need to be able to add units, merchandise, or services. So if you offer various merchandise or services like tenant insurance to your customers, then you want to allow your tenants to engage with these offerings via your tenant portal. That'll provide you with some additional passive revenue. If you can help a tenant realize that they're going to need something before they need it, there's a significantly higher chance that they'll then purchase that from you. So that's convenience for them and revenue for you, which is a win-win. Okay, excuse me. So now that we're all aligned on what we mean when we say tenant portal, let's go ahead and jump into today's discussion. So Fraser, you and I spoke last year about your journey into self-storage and the numerous benefits of using management software to help you run the business. We also spent some time discussing the benefits that you were able to reap from using Tenant Portal specifically. Would you mind sharing a little bit of your story of that first facility you bought and what your experience was like?
Yeah, definitely. So the first facility that I bought was built by an older gentleman on the same property as his house, and he'd been running it by himself for about 20 years, mom and pop style management, as I would call it. The facility was clean, it was well taken care of, but there was little to no technology involved at the facility at all. There was maybe 1 or 2 web pages on some sort of website, if I can remember, and then a phone number to call on the sign outside posted on the facility. The man and his wife had the tenants sign paper contracts in person when they moved in. When it was time to pay, the tenants would bring their payment in person to his house or the payment mailbox that sat on the property. When the couple recorded the rent payments from the tenant, it was written down on like a manila card stock with the date and the amount paid. And then the card stock was then filed away that they had paid for that month. The leases were kept in folders and organized that way. And then when they had to write down notes, they put them down on an extra sheet of paper with the date and then put that back with the lease. And when I first took this over, you could tell it was just a very time-consuming and very inefficient way to run this. There was just so much unneeded time spent to record payments all by hand, making sure it all balances out, which I think is one of the worst ways to try to make sure payments are all taken care of is by hand. And then anytime we had to look up information for a tenant, if they had to call in, we'd have to look through all the folders, try to find theirs, then pull up their notes sheet, read through all the notes, and pick it out like that. Once we got the management software set up, then we're able to connect into something like a tenant portal, and then all of that stuff could be done by them paying online. We can now accept credit and debit cards. That wasn't something they could even do before. And so there's just so much added time when you're having to run everything by hand and run it the really old style way.
Yeah, I'm sure that was probably a bit of a shock for you when you acquired that facility, and that switching things over to the management software for pen and paper was probably a night and day difference. As you implemented these changes, how did you, I guess, drive adoption really of the customers at the facility to switch them over to this new way of doing business with the facility via the tenant portal and management software versus coming in, pen and paper, that kind of thing?
One thing that's kind of a huge relief when you're going into taking over a storage facility like this is that a lot of tenants have credit or debit cards, and they're more than happy to pay that way because, one, it's easier for themselves. They don't have to come bring their payment in anymore. That specific facility Actually, right now, 87% of the tenants pay online or over the phone. So that means they're going onto the tenant portal, logging the website there, and paying. Either it's set up on auto pay, they're logging in, but they don't ever have to talk to me. They can just do it. It's so much more convenient. And instead of having to drive over to the facility, you know, they may live really far away, but they don't have to do that anymore. So super simple.
So it was a pretty drastic shift in management style of the facility, but you're saying it was actually a pretty easy shift for the customers to make, since they pretty much had everything they needed in place to be able to utilize that effectively.
Right, you're gonna have, you know, you're gonna have some of those people that no matter what, they like to do things a certain way. They just, you know, they want to do, they don't want to change. But you can always help guide those people to change. And it's, as long as you just walk them through the steps, then it can be pretty simple, and you're not gonna lose tenants. In fact, you're adding more value. And I had a lot of people appreciate what we were doing.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what were some of the biggest changes that occurred then as a result of you making that switch?
So one of the biggest things that we'll continue to implement is actually starting next month is that 100% of our tenants will be paying online and over the phone. And that's made possible by having that tenant portal and through the management software, having that all set up. So that's going to be huge. We're going to save so much time by not having to go pick up the checks and the money orders and cash that's mailed in or dropped in the door slot. So it's huge for us, because when we have to take a payment, you know, we've got to get the payment, then we've got to go put it into the computer, whether they're trying to in person to do it or they're bringing it in. And then after we do that, we take pictures of the checks to make sure that we have a record there. And then we've got to drive it to the bank, deposit it. Finally, all that's done. And now we have the payments in the bank. Whereas now that we'll have everybody 100%, all it is a quick phone call, which a phone call payment takes less than a minute, done, it's in the system and it's processed. And so we get paid. Or it's online or through our app, and then boom, it's right there. It's paid and it's all taken care of. So that's going to save us a ton of time as well. The other part that it pushes is that it pushes us to allow to do online rentals through the tenant portal. That's all connected. So somebody can rent out online 100%. It probably takes them 5 minutes. So we are speeding up the process for service for tenants to be able to rent out a unit, as well as speeding up the process of receiving money, all by doing that all in the tenant portal. That, or, you know, it could be a phone call or through our app. But either way, they have 100% of way to be able to do that. So much better experience for the customers, much faster way to take money. That's the biggest thing that we are seeing. So somebody can rent a unit in the middle. That's the other thing too I want to mention with the tenant portal, is that it allows us to do things in the middle of the night when we're not awake. We're not technically open for our office hours to take the phone calls. I've had it before where, you know, you wake up the next morning and somebody rented a unit. And they can do that all through the tenant portal. And so that's huge for us. It maximizes our revenue even more.
Yeah, that makes sense. You know, one of the things that stuck out to me from our conversation last year that you mentioned was that by implementing the tenant portal, it saved you time, but it also ended up making you money, right? Through the ability to more easily collect late fees and not having to worry about the negotiation with customers on the phone or in person and do that, right? So if you had to put a number on how much time it saved you, how much extra revenue you pulled in as a result of those, you know, easier late fees, how would you classify that?
So one of the biggest things that I look at with the tenant portal and being able to have that is, one, I've kind of touched on, you can start to build up how much time it takes to record all the payments and to finally get it to the bank. Just so much time. So us cutting all that out is going to be huge for us. We don't have to waste time on those things that is not needed to waste time on. You shouldn't need to count up checks and all of that. Take that out of your business and you have it set somewhere else. The other thing too, it's huge, is renting out units. When we rent out a unit in person, or when we used to, I would notice it would take, you know, probably at least 20 minutes, maybe 20, 30 minutes to rent out a unit to somebody. That's a lot of wasted time. It's not that I don't mind conversation with people, but when we're in a business, we want to get that part done really quickly and go on. When you're in person with renting out a unit, they may want to go see the unit, or you may feel more obligated to walk them to the unit after you're done. And after you walk through and you have this long conversation about renting the unit and going through all that spiel. When it's on the phone, and we can do that all on the phone, it takes about 10 minutes. So that was already a huge cut down to be able to have the ability to do that on the phone. And then when they do it online, it's no time for us at all, pretty much. We notice it, maybe 30 seconds of our time, a minute, we notice that the tenant moved in, make sure the documents are signed, and you're done. So you're talking, I don't know what that percentage is, but from 30 minutes down to 1 minute is huge on your time, especially when you think about how many tenants are moving in. You can maximize how many tenants you can rent out to in a day. It pretty much takes away the cap of how much time you can spend on renting out units to unlimited, because of the ability for tenants to just do it all themselves. So that's huge. So tons of hours are saved and will be saved continually, having this system be pushed more and marketed out there more for people. And then the other part is just the revenue. We're able to receive revenue quicker. When tenants are paying, they can pay they will be able to pay 3 ways starting September 1st, and that will be online, through the tenant portal, over the phone, or through our app. And so the app, again, is essentially an extension of that portal. The phone is the phone, and then the portal there. And so people paying through the app and also our tenant portal allows it to not really have much of a conversation of if they're late. There's not really any conversation of waiving late fees, so we're able to realize more late fees there. We are able to collect the revenue faster. With our collection services and things like that, it automatically sends them the direct links and all of that. They can click on it and it pay immediately. And so we're just collecting rent a lot faster, and that's through having that tenant portal. So that's huge for us as well.
Yeah, that's so it was probably exciting, I guess, then to see such a difference like that from implementing something that was pretty simple to implement, right? So
right, it's super simple.
Yeah, and so at the time, I remember you telling me that you owned the day-to-day operations at the facility, right? So what were you able to do then with that time that you saved by implementing a tenant portal into your facility management approach?
Well, the less time that I have to spend on trying to do all those in-person activities, the more time I can focus on the automation of the business, as well as more time I can spend with my family. So having everything automated, having the tenant portal, having those things online allows me to run my business from just my phone, essentially. My phone and my laptop really is what I mainly use for the business. Having the tenant portal, having my management software, all of that set up allows me to hire out the other processes as well. There's no way you can connect a call center or a collections service or all the other parts of it, our lock system, connect all of that in there and have your business start to be more automated and way less time on all these nitty-gritty things if you don't first have your management software set up and connect in that tenant portal. You can't do any of those things. You're stuck with the older gentleman, which I guess was fine for him to do that. You're stuck with the older gentleman that's writing everything down on paper and spending all of his time on that. If I'm an older guy and I'm running my business, I want to be able to go and spend time with my grandkids. I don't want to be spending time doing all these minutia things. And so that's one of the biggest things, is it saved more time for me. I can spend more time with my family. I can spend more time growing and expanding my business and being able to all do this efficiently. The other thing as well is that there's kind of a cap to how much you can really do yourself and grow your business. So if you're wanting to have more than one facility or even more than a few, you're going to be limited on what you can do if you don't establish management software, tenant portal, all those things right away.
Yeah, yeah, and I can attest to the fact your ability to run your business when you're not at the facility, because I accidentally texted you while you were on vacation about this webinar. So appreciate you answering me and not holding that against me further.
No problem. Well, that's the other nice part, is that if I have to travel not just hours away from my facility, but states away or anything like that, is that I'm able to run my business the same as if I was on the property as if I was in China, essentially. So that's the other ability that it gives me as well. I can run it from anywhere in the entire world as long as I have a network connection. So,
yeah. So talking about the time savings that you had, it's great. It lines up kind of with what I was saying about the survey data that I mentioned earlier. It sounds like for you, though, it actually had probably even more of a swing in that time saving direction because you were coming from a pen and paper facility like that. So since we last spoke, what are some other ways that you've relied on the tenant portal to help you run your business, and maybe talk a little bit about your plans for implementing some changes in the future?
Well, hugely automation and technology. That's what I'm all about. I think it's important to have that in the business, and in my business specifically. And so another thing that we're able to connect in that tenant portal management software, that sort of thing, is an electronic gate. He just had a manual gate that he would physically open every morning and every evening, and it was like 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Well, one, that's not a super long amount of time. It's a good amount of time, but we're able to have our gates go from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. So we were able to extend the amount of time that tenants can go in there. Two, it allows the system to connect in there to lock people out if they haven't paid. He can't do that unless you're gonna literally stand by the gate, close it when someone hasn't paid that shows up, open it again for the person. You would have to literally sit by the gate all day long to stop people from going in the facility. It allows us to connect our locks into the system as well. For vacant units, a person, when they rent out through the tenant portal there, they can rent out the whole system. They get their gate code, and then they also get the lock code, and it's texted to them automatically. All of those things are made possible by management software, the tenant portal, having that all done. It's amazing. So there's a lot of nitty-gritty things I could go into, but you could pick apart every single part of the business, and we're able to set up more automation with it and technology based back to having that management software first, and then getting that tenant portal connected in there. So I just push so much on the automation of it, saving time. Those are the biggest things.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, hey, Fraser, this was great. Thank you so much for speaking with us today about this and your experience with acquiring and implementing these changes at your facility. For everyone on the call, I wanted to quickly recap what we covered today. So we defined what we meant by the tenant portal, outlining the most important capabilities that it should have. So as a reminder, your tenant portal is a primary way for you to facilitate convenient digital engagement for your customers, which then in turn reduces the operational burden of your management team. You should make sure that your tenant portal enables your tenants to manage their account info, view unit info or documents, sign new documents, make payments and set up auto pay, and then also purchase units or merchandise or services. We also discussed some of the practical benefits of using a tenant portal. Our survey found that operators save, on average, 11 hours per facility per month after implementing a tenant portal on their website. Fraser then discussed how the time savings that he made by implementing a tenant portal helped him to do more around his facility. And he also mentioned that implementing a tenant portal had the surprise benefit of increasing revenue due to tenants being more likely to accept the late fee without trying to negotiate a discount in person. So, Fraser, again, thank you for joining us, sharing your experience.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate, Nico, the opportunity to share, and I hope that that information was helpful to everyone. If you guys have questions, you can hit me up to social media and that sort of thing. TikTok, yeah, anyways.
That's true, yes. Find Fraser on TikTok. He has a lot of good content on there, self-storage related. All right, so we do have a couple minutes left. So I want to get to look through some of the questions that we got here. All right, this is a good one. Fraser, how much has the tenant portal affected the positive customer service aspect of your business?
People love the fact that they can just do everything on there. They can look it up. It doesn't mean that I don't ever have to look up a payment for someone or look up their account information if they don't log on, but they're able to just go on there. I hope I'm answering this correctly, but it just makes it a lot more simple. It puts it more in their hands, gives them all the needed information, and so they can just look it up anytime.
Yeah, I think that's a huge aspect of the customer service. I know one of the things that people are concerned about when you do this, the automation or the offsite payments and rentals and that kind of thing is missing that that touch in person with the customer and having the manager make that connection. I do think that, in Matt's webinar talking about this tenant shift to desiring to interact digitally with businesses, and this is across most industries, right? Not just self-storage, but it plays a huge role in self-storage as well. And I think that providing these opportunities for tenants to interact digitally aligns with what their goals and needs are. And so that in and of itself is providing a positive customer service aspect to the business. Now, Fraser, you and I also talked, and you mentioned that you're still available by phone for your customers, and you talk to customers over the phone when they have issues. So you're still able to provide that customer experience piece of it, right?
Right. Yeah, definitely. So we're still there, no matter what they need. Phone call, text, all of them.
Yeah. All right. We have this question. How do you go about auction or selling unpaid units, Fraser?
Everything I do is online, and so I don't do any auctions in person. I use storagetreasures.com. That's the website I use, but there's a lot of auction sites out there. So basically, when we do the auction process, we go in, cut their lock, take pictures of the unit, and we lock it out with, we use DaVinci locks because they connect into the system really easily. And then we just post everything online, and I let it sit on there for a few days, and then it gets auctioned, and then they get the code for a temporary code for the gate and the unit. It's a really simple and fast process to do auctions. So having everything connected, a lot of that is based through the management software, not as much the tenant portal, but getting that established allows you to do all that and save way more time than trying to post an ad in the newspaper. So yeah, I would do it that way as well.
Yep, makes sense. All right,
as long as your state allows it.
Say that again?
As long as your state allows it, and you follow your state laws, whatever those are.
That's true, yes, follow your state laws. All right, we have a lot of really good questions here. We don't have time to get to all of them, but we will follow up with all of you. So if you have any questions, we have a couple more minutes, go ahead and drop them in there, or just feel free to email us and we'll follow up with you. A quick reminder before I let you all go, though, on Friday, September 3rd, we'll be hosting our next installment of Matt Beal's Do More webinar series on the topic of the supply crunch. Specifically, we'll be discussing how these trends are playing out in various regions across the U.S., measuring the effectiveness of your financials and operations when you're not competing for demand, and then also best practices that you can use in situations like this. So that concludes today's webinar. If you have any questions that come up throughout the week, please don't hesitate to reach us at webinars@storable.com. And for those of you that join later would like to re-watch today's presentation, the recording will be live on our blog on Monday. For all of you out there, stay healthy, stay safe, and we'll see you in 2 weeks for our next webinar. Thank you for attending, and have a great day.